I lost my wife. But I found myself.
The kitchen clock read 11:47 p.m. when I heard Rachel's Mercedes purr into our driveway. I sat in the dark, nursing my third beer and wondering when exactly my wife had stopped pretending to come home at reasonable hours. The automatic garage door rumbled open, and I could hear her heels clicking against the concrete floor with that particular rhythm that meant she'd had more than a few drinks. I'm Jack Mallory, 41 years old, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had a pretty good handle on my life. I run a home automation business, smart homes, security systems, the works. It's steady money, and I'm good at what I do. Rachel always said I was too practical, too boring. She wasn't wrong, but I never thought that was necessarily a bad thing. The side door opened, and Rachel stumbled in, her designer heels catching slightly on the threshold. Even in the dim light from the hallway, I could see her lipstick was smudged, her blonde hair mussed in a way that suggested more than just wind from the parking lot. "Jesus, Jack! Why are you sitting in the dark like some kind of creep?" She flicked on the overhead lights, and I squinted against the sudden brightness. "Couldn't sleep," I said, taking another sip of my beer. "How was your evening with the girls?" Rachel kicked off her heels and padded to the refrigerator in her stockings. "Fine, same as always. Jade's dating some new guy who thinks he's God's gift to women. And Melissa's still complaining about her divorce lawyer." She pulled out a bottle of white wine and poured herself a generous glass, not bothering to ask if I wanted anything. We'd been married for 12 years, and somewhere along the way, she'd stopped asking about a lot of things. "You know what your problem is, Jack?" Rachel leaned against the kitchen island, swirling her wine. Her words had that slightly loose quality that came after her third or fourth drink of the evening. I'm sure you're about to tell me. You're too comfortable, too settled. We both are." She took a long sip of wine, studying me over the rim of her glass. "Maybe we need to shake things up." I set my beer down on the kitchen table, giving her my full attention. "What kind of shaking up?" Rachel's green eyes had a glint I'd seen before, usually right before she suggested something that would cost us money we didn't have or involve people I didn't particularly like. "I've been thinking about boundaries," she said, her voice taking on that tone she used when she was about to drop something she thought was profound. How they're really just artificial constructs we create to limit ourselves. Boundaries like what? Like monogamy? The word hung in the air between us like a challenge. I felt something cold settle in my stomach, but I kept my expression neutral. Rachel thrived on reactions, and I'd learned long ago not to give her the satisfaction of seeing me flinch. "Interesting theory," I said. "You've been reading those self-help books again?" "I'm being serious, Jack." She moved closer, perching on the edge of the table next to my chair. "When's the last time either of us felt truly excited about anything? When's the last time we felt alive? I feel pretty alive most days." "Bees," her voice sharpened. "You go to work, you come home, you tinker around in that basement workshop of yours, and then you fall asleep watching Netflix. That's not living, that's just existing." I studied my wife's face in the harsh kitchen light. At 39, Rachel was still beautiful in that polished professional way that had first attracted me when we'd met at a networking event 12 years ago. She was a PR executive then, and she still was now, though she'd moved companies twice and somehow managed to negotiate increasingly flexible schedules that seemed to involve a lot of evening client meetings and weekend team-building exercises. "So, what are you suggesting?" I asked. Rachel's smile was the kind that probably worked on her clients, all confidence and practiced charm. "I'm suggesting we give each other permission to explore, to see what else is out there." "You want an open marriage?" "I want us to be honest about what we both already know." She reached over and touched my hand, her fingers cool from the wine glass. "We're not the same people we were 12 years ago. We want different things. There's no shame in admitting that." I looked down at her hand on mine, noting the fresh manicure, the expensive watch I'd given her for her last birthday, the wedding ring that had cost me 2 months' salary when we were younger and broker and apparently happier. "And you've already got someone in mind for this exploration?" Rachel's pause was just a fraction too long. "It's not about having someone specific in mind. It's about having the freedom to be open to possibilities." "Right. Possibilities. Don't use that tone with me, Jack." "What tone?" "That smug, condescending tone you get when you think you're smarter than everyone else in the room." I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. "You know what, Rachel? You're absolutely right." She blinked, clearly not expecting agreement. "I am?" Yeah, we should definitely be more honest with each other. In fact, I think you should spend this weekend with whoever you've been texting at 2 in the morning for the past 3 weeks. The color drained from Rachel's face. I don't know what you're talking about. Ethan Cross, right? The guy with the Maserati and the condo downtown? The one who's been sending you pictures of his abs and asking when you're going to leave your boring husband and come play with a real man. Rachel's wine glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the kitchen floor, sending white wine and glass shards across the tile. How did you... I install security systems for a living, Rachel. Did you really think I wouldn't notice when someone's been hacking into our Wi-Fi network to video chat with my wife at midnight? She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew and how much I was guessing. Finally, she lifted her chin in that defiant way that meant she'd decided to brazen it out. Fine. Yes. I've been talking to Ethan, and yes, maybe I've been thinking about what it would be like to be with someone who actually appreciates me. Someone who appreciates you. Someone who doesn't take me for granted. Someone who still gets excited about life, about possibilities, about sleeping with his married neighbor's wife. Don't be crude, Jack. I stood up, stepping carefully around the broken glass. You know what's crude, Rachel? Coming home at midnight with another man's cologne on your clothes and then lecturing me about honesty? I never. You did. You absolutely did. I walked to the kitchen counter and picked up her purse, pulling out her phone. Want to bet that if I scroll through your messages right now, I'll find some very interesting conversations about weekend plans? Rachel lunged for the phone, but I held it out of her reach. Give me that. Why? I thought we were being honest now. I thought we were exploring possibilities. Jack, please. I unlocked her phone with the passcode I'd watched her enter 100 times. Our anniversary date, which struck me as particularly ironic under the circumstances. The text thread with Ethan Cross was right there at the top of her messages, and it made for fascinating reading. Let's see, I said, scrolling through the messages. Here's a good one from yesterday. Can't wait for Jack to go out of town again so we can have the whole weekend. And this one's nice. He's so clueless, I could probably bring you home for dinner and he wouldn't notice. Rachel's face had gone from pale to flushed. We were just talking. Fantasy stuff. It didn't mean anything. Oh, but this one's my favorite, I continued, finding the message I'd read earlier that evening while she was supposedly out with the girls. I told Jack I want an open marriage, going to ease him into the idea so he doesn't freak out when I tell him about us. The silence in the kitchen was broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of our neighbor's dog barking. Rachel stood there in her stocking feet, surrounded by broken glass and wine stains, looking like a woman who just realized her carefully laid plans had gone spectacularly wrong. Jack, I can explain. No need, I said, setting her phone down on the counter. You've been perfectly clear. You want honesty? You want to explore possibilities? You want to shake things up? I walked past her toward the kitchen door, then paused and looked back. Congratulations, Rachel. You're about to get exactly what you asked for. I spent the rest of the night in my basement workshop, surrounded by the comfortable clutter of circuit boards, security cameras, and half-finished automation projects. It was nearly dawn when I finally fell asleep on the old couch I kept down there, and I woke up to the sound of Rachel's heels clicking around upstairs, getting ready for work. By the time I showered and dressed, she was gone. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter, something about needing space to think and staying at Jade's for a few days. The broken wine glass had been cleaned up, but she'd missed a few small shards that glittered in the morning sunlight streaming through the window. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring at my wife's note and thinking about the conversation I'd had with my business partner Simon 3 months ago. Simon was ex-military like me, and he had a talent for reading people that had served us both well in the security business. Your wife's cheating on you, he'd said over beers at Murphy's Tavern, our usual Thursday night spot. That's a heck of a thing to say to a man about his wife. It's also true. Simon had fixed me with those pale blue eyes that missed nothing. Question is, what are you going to do about it? At the time, I'd told him he was wrong. I defended Rachel, made excuses for her late nights and weekend disappearances. But Simon had just shrugged and said, when you're ready to stop lying to yourself, let me know. I'll help you figure out what to do next. Now, sitting in my empty kitchen with Rachel's confession still echoing in my head, I pulled out my phone and called Simon. Took you long enough, he said by way of greeting. She told me last night about the affair, about wanting an open marriage. How'd you take it? Better than she expected, I think. Which seemed to piss her off more than if I'd started screaming and throwing things. Simon chuckled. That's because she wanted you to be the bad guy, wanted you to lose your crap so she could justify what she's been doing behind your back. So what now? Now we make sure she gets exactly what she deserves. You free today? An hour later, Simon was sitting at my kitchen table, his laptop open and connected to my home network. At 52, Simon looked like exactly what he was, a former Army intelligence officer who'd transitioned into private security consulting. His gray hair was cut military short, and he had the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd seen more than his share of the world's uglier corners. Okay, he said, pulling up a series of windows on his screen. Let's see what your loving wife has been up to. I'd already installed discrete monitoring software on our home network months ago, back when I first started suspecting something was wrong. It was all perfectly legal. My network, my equipment, and technically Rachel had agreed to the monitoring when she'd signed our joint insurance policies that covered cybersecurity for our home-based business. Jesus Christ, Simon muttered, scrolling through logs of Rachel's online activity. She's not even trying to hide it. The evidence was overwhelming. Video calls with Ethan Cross at all hours, searches for divorce lawyers, online shopping for lingerie that I'd never seen her wear, hotel reservations made and canceled, and messages. God, the messages. Look at this, Simon said, pointing to a chat thread between Rachel and her friend Jade. She's been planning this for months. The open marriage thing was just supposed to be a way to ease you into accepting the affair. I read over his shoulder, my stomach clenching with each message. Rachel had laid out her strategy in detail, how she'd gradually introduce the idea of exploring other relationships, how she'd make me feel like I was being unreasonable if I objected, how she'd eventually move in with Ethan while keeping me on the hook for the mortgage and her credit card bills. She really thought I was that stupid, I said. She thought you were that in love with her, Simon corrected. There's a difference. He was right. 6 months ago, I probably would have been that pathetic. I would have agreed to the open marriage, convinced myself it was sophisticated and modern, and spent my weekends alone while my wife played house with her boyfriend. So what's the plan? I asked. Simon's smile was the kind that had probably made enemy combatants very nervous back in his army days. We're going to give your wife exactly what she wants. Complete honesty, total transparency, no more secrets. Meaning? Meaning everyone in her life is going to know exactly what kind of person Rachel Mallory really is. We started with Ethan Cross. Simon had run a background check on him within an hour, and the results were illuminating. Ethan was 43, divorced twice, and currently 3 months behind on his Maserati payments. His successful entrepreneur image was mostly smoke and mirrors. He'd burned through 2 failed startups and was currently living off credit cards and money borrowed from his elderly parents. This guy's a fraud, Simon said, printing out copies of Ethan's credit report and court filings from his various business failures. Your wife's trading down, Jack. Way down. She doesn't know that. No, but she's about to. Simon had also pulled property records showing that Ethan's downtown condo was actually a rental, not the investment property he'd apparently been bragging about. The man was leveraged to the hilt, and one missed payment away from financial disaster. Here's what we're going to do, Simon said, leaning back in his chair. We're going to make sure Ethan's creditors know exactly where to find him. And we're going to make sure Rachel's friends and co-workers know exactly what she's been up to. How? Leave that to me. But first, we need to secure your assets. How much does Rachel have access to? I thought about our joint accounts, the credit cards, the investment portfolio we'd built together over 12 years of marriage. Pretty much everything. Not anymore. Simon walked me through the process of protecting my finances, moving money to accounts Rachel couldn't access, canceling joint credit cards, changing passwords on investment accounts. It was all legal, all documented, and all designed to ensure that when the dust settled, I wouldn't be left holding the bag for Rachel's midlife crisis. What about the house? I asked. House is in both your names, right? Yeah. Then she's entitled to half, but that doesn't mean she gets to live here while she's screwing around with her boyfriend. Simon explained the process for legally removing Rachel from the property, how I could change the locks, cancel her access codes to the security system, and generally make it clear that she was no longer welcome in what had been our home. Is that legal? Perfectly legal. She abandoned the marital residence to pursue an extramarital affair. You've got documentation of that in her own words. Any decent divorce lawyer will tell you that you're within your rights to secure the property. By the end of the day, I felt like I was seeing clearly for the first time in months. Rachel had made her choice, and now she was going to live with the consequences. No more Mr. Nice Guy. No more understanding husband willing to work things out. My phone buzzed with a text message from Rachel. "Jack, we need to talk. This is all a big misunderstanding." I showed the message to Simon, who snorted. "Too little, too late." I typed back, "No misunderstanding. Enjoy your weekend with Ethan. I'll be changing the locks." Her response came back within seconds. "You can't do that. It's my house, too." "Was your house," I replied. Past tense. Then I blocked her number and poured myself a beer. For the first time in months, I felt like I was in control of my own life. Rachel showed up at 7 the next morning, pounding on the front door and shouting my name. I watched her through the security camera feed on my phone, noting that she was still wearing the same clothes from yesterday and looked like she'd slept in her car. I didn't answer the door. Instead, I called my lawyer, David Chen, and explained the situation. David was a family law specialist who'd handled my business contracts for years, and he wasn't surprised by my call. "I was wondering when you'd figure it out," he said. "Rachel's been asking around about divorce attorneys for the past 2 months. Word gets around in legal circles." "She has?" "Oh yeah, she consulted with 3 different firms asking about asset division and spousal support. Specifically, she wanted to know how much she could get if she divorced you for irreconcilable differences." The hits just kept coming. What did they tell her? Probably that she'd get half of everything, plus alimony for a few years. But that was before she moved in with her boyfriend. Adultery changes the equation significantly, especially when you've got documentation. David walked me through my options, which were better than I'd expected. Maine was a no-fault divorce state, but adultery could still affect property division and spousal support. With the evidence Simon and I had gathered, Rachel's claim to half our assets was looking a lot less solid. "My advice? File first," David said. "Get ahead of this thing before she has a chance to spin the narrative." While I was on the phone with David, Simon was implementing phase 2 of our plan. He'd spent the morning creating anonymous email accounts and gathering contact information for Rachel's friends, coworkers, and family members. "You sure about this?" he asked, his finger hovering over the send button. I looked at the security camera feed again. Rachel had given up pounding on the door and was now sitting on our front steps, crying into her phone, probably calling Jade or Ethan or maybe one of those divorce lawyers she'd been consulting behind my back. "Do it." The email was simple and to the point. It contained screenshots of Rachel's text messages with Ethan, copies of hotel receipts charged to our joint credit card, and a brief explanation that Rachel Mallory was having an affair and had been using company time and resources to facilitate it. The email went to Rachel's boss, her co-workers, her friends, her sister in California, her parents in Florida, and every member of the country club where she played tennis twice a week. My phone started ringing within an hour. The first call was from Rachel's sister, Jennifer. "Jack, what the heck is going on? I just got the most disturbing email about Rachel." "What email?" I asked, though I knew exactly what she was talking about. "Someone sent me screenshots of text messages between Rachel and some man named Ethan. Please tell me this is some kind of sick joke." "I wish it was." Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. "Oh, Jack, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "Neither did I until a few days ago." "What are you going to do?" "I'm filing for divorce. Today." The second call was from Rachel's boss, Margaret Walsh. Margaret was a sharp woman in her 50s who ran the PR firm where Rachel worked, and she got straight to the point. "Jack, I need to ask you about some allegations regarding Rachel's conduct." "What kind of allegations?" "The kind that suggests she's been using company resources for personal matters. The kind that could expose us to liability issues with our clients." I could hear the anger in Margaret's voice, and I didn't blame her. Rachel's affair wasn't just a personal betrayal. It was a professional liability. PR firms lived and died by their reputation, and having an employee who conducted extramarital affairs on company time was exactly the kind of scandal that could cost them clients. "I can't speak to Rachel's professional conduct," I said carefully, "but I can tell you that she's been having an affair, and she's moved out of our house to pursue that relationship." "I see. Thank you for your honesty, Jack." The third call was from Rachel herself, and she was furious. "How dare you?" she screamed into the phone. "How dare you send those emails to my family? To my boss?" "I didn't send any emails," I said calmly. Bees, you're trying to destroy my life. I'm not trying to destroy anything, Rachel. I'm just not covering for you anymore. You bastard. You miserable, vindictive bastard. Is that what Ethan thinks too? There was a pause. What do you mean? I mean, how's your boyfriend handling the news that his sugar mama is about to lose her job and half her assets in a messy divorce? Another pause. Longer this time. Ethan's been very supportive. Has he? That's interesting because according to my sources, he's been screening your calls since this morning. It wasn't true, but I wanted to plant the seed of doubt. Men like Ethan Cross were only interested in married women as long as those women had something to offer. Money, status, security. A soon-to-be divorced woman with no job and a reputation in tatters wasn't nearly as attractive. You're lying. Am I? When's the last time you actually spoke to him? Not texted, spoke. I could hear Rachel's breathing getting faster, more panicked. He's busy with work. Right, work. How's that going for him, by the way? The entrepreneurship thing? What do you mean? I mean, have you actually seen his business, his office, his financial statements? That's none of your business. It is when my wife is planning to leave me for him. Did you know he's 3 months behind on his car payments? Did you know his condo is a rental? Did you know his last 2 businesses failed and he's currently being sued by 4 different creditors? The silence on the other end of the line told me everything I needed to know. You're lying, Rachel said finally, but her voice lacked conviction. Ask him yourself. Ask to see his tax returns. Ask to meet his business partners. Ask him about the lawsuit filed by his former investors. I hung up before she could respond. Simon looked up from his laptop, grinning. Planting seeds of doubt? Something like that. How's phase 3 coming along? Oh, you're gonna love this. Simon had been busy while I was fielding phone calls. He'd created fake social media profiles and used them to friend request several of Rachel's coworkers and tennis partners. Once accepted, he'd been able to see their private posts and comments about Rachel's situation. The gossip was spreading like wildfire. Rachel's affair was the talk of her office, her tennis club, and her social circle. The general consensus seemed to be shock and disappointment. Rachel had always presented herself as the perfect wife and professional woman, and the revelation that she'd been living a double life had shattered that image. Look at this, Simon said, pointing to a Facebook post from one of Rachel's tennis partners. Quote, I can't believe Rachel would do this to Jack. He's such a nice guy, and she's been lying to all of us for months. And this one, he continued, scrolling to another post. Quote, I always thought there was something off about Rachel. Too perfect, you know. Turns out I was right. The court of public opinion had rendered its verdict, and Rachel had been found guilty as charged. My phone buzzed with another text, this one from an unknown number. This is Ethan. We need to talk. I showed the message to Simon, who laughed out loud. Looks like Loverboy wants to negotiate. Should I respond? Oh, absolutely. Tell him you'll meet him at Murphy's Tavern at 8 tonight. Why Murphy's? Because it's a public place. It's full of people who know you. And it's the kind of blue-collar bar that'll make Mr. Maserati very uncomfortable. I typed back. Murphy's Tavern, 8 p.m. Come alone. His response was immediate. Fine. I spent the rest of the afternoon preparing for my meeting with Ethan Cross. Simon had put together a comprehensive file on the man. Financial records, court documents, employment history, even photos from his social media accounts that showed him posing with expensive cars and watches that he apparently couldn't afford. Remember, Simon said as we reviewed the materials, this guy's a fraud. He's been selling your wife a fantasy, and now that fantasy is about to collapse. He's going to be desperate to find a way out of this mess. What do you think he wants? Probably to convince you not to file for divorce, or to make some kind of deal where everyone keeps quiet and pretends this never happened. And what do I tell him? Simon's smile was predatory. You tell him it's too late for deals. Murphy's Tavern was exactly the kind of place Ethan Cross had probably never set foot in before. Dim lighting, worn wooden floors, and a clientele that consisted mainly of construction workers, mechanics, and other blue-collar guys who'd stop by for a beer after work. I've been coming here for years, ever since Simon and I started our business, and Jimmy the bartender knew me well enough to keep my usual spot at the end of the bar clear. I arrived at 7:30 and ordered a beer, positioning myself where I could see the front door. Simon was at a table in the corner, nursing a whiskey, and pretending to read a newspaper while keeping an eye on the situation. Ethan showed up at exactly 8 o'clock, and he was everything I'd expected based on Rachel's descriptions and his social media photos. Tall, lean, with the kind of artificially white teeth and perfectly styled hair that screamed expensive grooming. He was wearing a navy blue suit that probably cost more than most people made in a week, and he looked about as comfortable in Murphy's as a vegetarian at a barbecue competition. He spotted me at the bar and walked over, his Italian leather shoes clicking on the worn wooden floor. "Jack Mallory?" "That's me." I didn't get up, didn't offer to shake hands. "You must be Ethan." He slid onto the bar stool next to me, glancing around the bar with barely concealed distaste. "This is quite a place. It serves its purpose. What can I do for you, Ethan?" Jimmy appeared behind the bar, and Ethan ordered a martini with specific instructions about the gin and vermouth. Jimmy gave him a look that suggested he'd rather pour the drink over Ethan's head than serve it to him, but he made the martini without comment. "I think we both know why I'm here," Ethan said, adjusting his tie. "Actually, I don't. Why don't you enlighten me?" Ethan took a sip of his martini and winced slightly, probably because Jimmy had made it with well gin instead of the top-shelf stuff Ethan was used to. "The situation with Rachel has gotten out of hand." "Has it?" "Look, I understand you're upset. You have every right to be. But sending those emails to her family and employer was crossing a line." I took a long drink of my beer, studying Ethan's face. He was nervous, trying to hide it behind a facade of confidence, but I could see the tension in his jaw and the way his fingers drummed against the bar. "I didn't send any emails," I said. "Come on, Jack. We both know. I know that my wife has been having an affair with you for months. I know that she's been lying to me, to her family, and to her employer. And I know that she's been using our joint credit cards to pay for hotel rooms where the two of you could sleep together behind my back." Several heads turned in our direction at the phrase, but I didn't care. Let them listen. Let them see exactly what kind of man Ethan Cross was. "There's no need for that kind of language," Ethan said, his voice tight. "Isn't there? What would you call it when a man sleeps with another man's wife?" "It's complicated." "No, it's really not. It's adultery. It's betrayal. It's two people who decided their own pleasure was more important than honesty or integrity or basic human decency." Ethan's facade was starting to crack. "Look, I didn't come here to be lectured by you. Then why did you come here?" "To offer you a deal?" I almost laughed. "A deal? What kind of deal?" Ethan leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Rachel doesn't have to know about this conversation. We can work something out between us, man to man." "I'm listening." "You drop the divorce proceedings. You stop spreading stories about Rachel and me. In exchange, I'll end things with her and disappear from both your lives." "That's your offer?" "It's a good offer, Jack. Think about it. You get your wife back, your marriage stays intact, and nobody else gets hurt." I stared at him for a long moment, then started laughing. Not a polite chuckle, but a genuine belly-deep laugh that made several other patrons look over to see what was so funny. "You think I want her back?" I asked, when I finally caught my breath. Ethan's confidence wavered. "Don't you?" "Ethan, let me explain something to you. My wife has been lying to me for months. She's been stealing money from our joint accounts to finance her affair with you. She's been planning to divorce me and take half of everything I've worked for, all while pretending to be the loving, devoted wife." I leaned closer to him, close enough to smell his expensive cologne. "Why the heck would I want that back?" Because you love her?" "I love the woman I thought she was. Turns out that woman never existed." Ethan was starting to sweat despite the air conditioning in the bar. "Okay, then what do you want?" "I want exactly what's happening right now. I want Rachel to face the consequences of her choices. I want her friends and family to know what kind of person she really is. And I want you to understand that there are consequences for sleeping with another man's wife." "What kind of consequences?" I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo Simon had taken earlier that day. Ethan's Maserati with a repo notice taped to the windshield. The kind where your creditors find out where you've been hiding your assets. Ethan's face went white. "You son of a witch." "Oh, that's just the beginning." I scrolled to another photo, a screenshot of an email sent to the investors in Ethan's failed startup, informing them of his current address and employment status. Turns out, when you default on business loans, people get very interested in tracking you down. You can't do this. I can and I have. See, the thing about having an affair with a married woman is that it tends to make her husband very motivated to learn everything he can about the other man. And you, Ethan, have been a very interesting subject to research. I signaled Jimmy for another beer, taking my time before continuing. Did you know that you're currently being sued by 4 different creditors? Or that your ex-wife is trying to garnish your wages for unpaid alimony? Or that the IRS has a lien on your bank accounts for unpaid taxes from 2019? Ethan was gripping his martini glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. How did you— I'm in the security business, remember? I know how to find information. This is harassment. No, this is consequences. You decided to sleep with my wife. You decided to help her plan the destruction of my marriage. You decided to treat me like I was some kind of fool who would never figure out what was happening. I stood up, dropping a 20 on the bar to cover my drinks. Now you get to live with the results of those decisions. Ethan grabbed my arm as I started to walk away. Wait, please. We can work something out. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back at his face. Take your hand off me. He let go immediately. Jack, please, I'll give you whatever you want. What I want is for you to stay the heck away from me and my wife. Your wife? I thought you said you didn't want her back. I don't. But she's still my wife until the divorce is final, which means she's still my responsibility. And I take my responsibilities seriously, even when other people don't. I started walking toward the door, then paused and looked back. Oh, and Ethan? That fancy condo you've been using to impress Rachel? Your landlord got a very interesting phone call today about some lease violations. Something about unauthorized overnight guests and using the property for purposes not specified in the rental agreement. Ethan's mouth fell open. You didn't. I did. Enjoy finding a new place to live. I walked out of Murphy's Tavern feeling better than I had in months. Behind me, I could hear Ethan calling my name, but I didn't look back. Simon caught up with me in the parking lot. How'd it go? About as well as expected. He tried to make a deal. And I told him it was too late for deals. Simon grinned. Good man. What's next? Now we wait for Rachel to realize that her knight in shining armor is actually a fraud in a rented suit. Think it'll take long? I looked back at Murphy's Tavern, where Ethan was probably still sitting at the bar, trying to figure out how his perfect plan had gone so spectacularly wrong. Not long at all. Rachel called me at 6 a.m. 3 days later, and she was crying so hard I could barely understand what she was saying. Jack, please, I need to come home. I need to talk to you. You can't come home, Rachel. I changed the locks, remember? Please. Ethan, he's gone. He disappeared. His phone goes straight to voicemail. His condo is empty, and nobody knows where he went. I wasn't surprised. Simon had called me the night before to let me know that Ethan Cross had been spotted loading his belongings into a moving truck. Apparently, the combination of angry creditors, a eviction notice, and the prospect of facing a very angry husband had been enough to convince him that it was time to find a new city to call home. That's unfortunate, I said. Jack, I made a mistake. A terrible mistake, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can work things out. No, we can't. Yes, we can. I love you, Jack. I've always loved you. This thing with Ethan, it was just a moment of weakness. A moment of weakness that lasted 3 months. Please, I'm begging you, don't throw away 12 years of marriage over this. I looked around my kitchen, our kitchen, noting how peaceful it had been for the past week without Rachel's drama and constant need for attention. I'd been sleeping better, eating better, and actually enjoying my work for the first time in months. Rachel, I got the papers from your divorce attorney yesterday. There was silence on the other end of the line. What papers? The papers you had drawn up 6 weeks ago. The ones demanding half of our assets, spousal support, and exclusive use of the house while the divorce was pending. More silence. I can explain. You had those papers prepared before you ever talked to me about an open marriage. You were planning to divorce me all along. The whole honesty conversation was just your way of trying to make me feel guilty for not going along with your plan. It's not what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like. You wanted to have your cake and eat it too. You wanted to keep me around to pay the bills while you played house with your boyfriend. Jack, please. The answer is no, Rachel. I'm not taking you back. I'm not going to counseling. I'm not going to pretend this never happened. But where am I supposed to go? I lost my job. I can't afford an apartment on my own. and my family won't even talk to me. You should have thought about that before you decided to have an affair. You bastard! You vindictive, cruel bastard! And there it was. The real Rachel, the one who'd been hiding behind the mask of the perfect wife for 12 years. The woman who thought she could manipulate and lie and cheat her way through life without ever facing consequences. I'm hanging up now, I said. Wait, Jack, wait, what if I could make it up to you? How? I could sign a postnuptial agreement, give up my claim to half the assets, take less in the divorce. You don't have a choice about that, Rachel. Adultery tends to affect property division, especially when it's as well documented as yours. Then what do you want? There has to be something you want. I thought about it for a moment. There was something I wanted, actually. Something that would give me a sense of closure and justice that the legal system couldn't provide. I want you to tell the truth, I said. What do you mean? I want you to admit publicly what you did. I want you to stop playing the victim and take responsibility for your choices. I can't do that. Then we have nothing to talk about. I hung up and poured myself a cup of coffee, enjoying the silence of my house. My house, not our house. The divorce papers would be filed by the end of the week, and with the evidence Simon and I had gathered, the proceedings would be swift and decisive. My phone rang again, but this time it was Simon. You're going to want to see this, he said. What now? Rachel posted something on Facebook. It's something. I pulled up Facebook on my laptop and navigated to Rachel's page. Her latest post was a long, rambling essay about marriage, forgiveness, and second chances. She'd written it like she was the wronged party, the victim of a vindictive husband who couldn't forgive a simple mistake. The comments were brutal. Her sister Jennifer had written, "A simple mistake? Rachel, you had an affair for 3 months and lied to everyone who cared about you." Her former co-worker Oliver had posted, "This is rich, coming from someone who used company resources to facilitate her affair." Even Jade, her supposed best friend, had weighed in. "Girl, you need to take some responsibility for your actions instead of blaming everyone else." But the comment that made me smile was from Mrs. Penn, our elderly neighbor who'd apparently been following the drama with great interest. I always knew there was something off about that woman. Poor Jack deserved so much better. Simon called back an hour later. She deleted the post. Good. Maybe she's finally starting to understand that playing the victim isn't going to work this time. Don't count on it. Women like Rachel never really learn. They just get better at hiding their true nature. Maybe, but that's not my problem anymore. Speaking of problems, I've got some news about our friend Ethan. Do tell. He surfaced in Phoenix. Apparently, he's already got a new target. A recently divorced real estate agent with 2 kids and a hefty alimony settlement. Some guys never learn. Some guys don't have to. There's always another lonely woman looking for excitement. I thought about that for a moment, wondering if Rachel would find another Ethan to validate her need for drama and attention. Probably, but that wasn't my concern anymore. You know what, Simon? I don't care what either of them does from now on. I'm done wasting energy on people who don't deserve it. Good man. So what's next for you? I looked around my kitchen, thinking about all the projects I'd put on hold while I was dealing with Rachel's drama. The business was doing well. I had my health. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe freely in my own home. I think I'm going to finish renovating the basement, maybe turn it into a proper workshop. Sounds like a plan. Need any help? I might take you up on that. After I hung up with Simon, I walked down to the basement and looked around at the space that had been my refuge during the worst parts of my marriage. It was time to turn it into something more than just a place to hide. Time to make it into something that reflected who I was becoming instead of who I'd been. I was measuring the space for new workbenches when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. I stared at the message for a moment, then deleted it without responding. Rachel could send all the threatening texts she wanted. She could try to play games, manipulate mutual friends, or spread lies about me. It didn't matter anymore. I had the truth, I had the law on my side, and most importantly, I had my self-respect back. The divorce would be final in a few months, and then Rachel Mallory would be nothing more than an expensive lesson learned. A reminder that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones most willing to betray you, and that the only person you can really count on is yourself. But I'd learned something else too, that I was stronger than I'd thought, smarter than I'd given myself credit for, and perfectly capable of fighting back when someone tried to destroy my life. Rachel had wanted honesty and transparency. She'd wanted to shake things up and explore new possibilities. She'd gotten exactly what she asked for. The final confrontation came on a Tuesday evening in October, 3 weeks before our divorce was scheduled to be finalized. I was working late at my basement workshop, installing new LED lighting fixtures, when I heard footsteps on the floor above. Someone was in my house. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept near my workbench and quietly made my way upstairs. The footsteps were coming from the kitchen, and I could hear voices, Rachel's voice, and another voice I didn't recognize. I crept to the kitchen doorway and peered around the corner. Rachel was there, along with a man I'd never seen before, tall, heavy-set, with the kind of cheap suit and aggressive posture that screamed hired muscle. They were going through my cabinets, looking for something. "It's got to be here somewhere," Rachel was saying. "He's obsessive about keeping records." "What exactly are we looking for?" the man asked. "Financial documents? Bank statements? Investment records? Anything that shows he's been hiding assets from me?" I almost laughed out loud. After everything she'd done, Rachel was still trying to find a way to take me for everything I was worth. I stepped into the kitchen, the baseball bat held casually at my side. "Looking for something?" Rachel spun around, her face going pale when she saw me. The man with her reached inside his jacket, but I raised the bat slightly and he thought better of whatever he was planning. "Jack, we were just breaking into my house, going through my personal belongings, planning to steal financial documents." "It's not stealing. I'm still your wife. I have a right to know about our assets. You stopped being my wife the day you decided to sleep with Ethan Cross, and you stopped having any rights to my assets when you committed adultery." The man stepped forward. "Hey, watch how you talk to the lady." I looked him up and down, noting the poorly fitted suit, the scuffed shoes, and the way he kept glancing toward the back door like he was planning an escape route. "And you are?" "Tony Marconi. I'm Mrs. Mallory's consultant." "Consultant? Is that what we're calling hired thugs these days?" Tony's face darkened. "You got a smart mouth, buddy. I've got a lot more than that." I pulled out my phone with my free hand and showed them the screen, which was displaying a live feed from the security cameras I'd installed throughout the house. "I've got video of you breaking in. I've got audio of you planning to steal my financial documents. And I've got about 3 minutes before the police arrive." Rachel's face went white. "You called the police?" "Silent alarm triggered the moment you forced the back door. They're probably pulling into the driveway right now." As if on cue, we could hear car doors slamming outside, followed by heavy footsteps on the front porch. "Police! Open up!" Tony bolted for the back door, but I was ready for him. I swung the baseball bat low, catching him across the shins and sending him sprawling across the kitchen floor. "Going somewhere?" The front door burst open, and 2 uniformed officers entered with their tools drawn. "Drop the bat!" one of them shouted. I set the bat down carefully and raised my hands. "I'm the homeowner. These 2 broke into my house." It took about 20 minutes to sort everything out. The security camera footage clearly showed Rachel and Tony forcing the back door and entering the house without permission. It also recorded their conversation about stealing my financial documents. Rachel tried to claim she had a right to enter the house as my wife, but the restraining order I'd filed the previous week made that argument moot. She'd been legally barred from the property, and breaking that order was a criminal offense. Tony, meanwhile, had outstanding warrants in 2 states and was currently on probation for assault. Associating with him was probably going to violate several conditions of Rachel's bail from her previous arrest for harassment. As the officers led them away in handcuffs, Rachel looked back at me with pure hatred in her eyes. "This isn't over, Jack. I'll make you pay for this." "No, Rachel, it is over. And you already have paid." Officer Martinez, the senior officer on the scene, stayed behind to take my statement. "You know, Mr. Mallory, I've been doing this job for 15 years, and I've seen a lot of messy divorces. But this one's something special." "How so?" "Most of the time, it's the husband who loses his mind and does something stupid. But your wife, she's really gone off the deep end. She's not handling the consequences of her choices very well. That's one way to put it." Officer Martinez closed his notebook and looked around my kitchen. "You might want to consider upgrading your security system. If she makes bail again, there's no telling what she might try next." "Already on it." After the police left, I called Simon and filled him in on the evening's excitement. Jesus Christ, Jack. She hired muscle? Apparently. Guy named Tony Marconi. Real winner, outstanding warrants, multiple priors, the whole 9 yards. Where the heck did she find him? I have no idea, but it shows how desperate she's gotten. This is good for your divorce case, though. Breaking and entering, violating a restraining order, conspiracy to commit theft. Her lawyer is going to have a hard time arguing for any kind of favorable settlement now. That's what I'm hoping. Simon was quiet for a moment. You know, Jack, I'm proud of you. For what? For handling this the right way. A lot of guys would have lost their crap by now. Would have done something stupid that would have landed them in jail instead of her. I thought about it. I know you did, but you kept your cool, you played it smart. And now she's the one facing criminal charges, while you come out looking like the victim you actually are. The next morning, I met with my lawyer, David Chen, to discuss how the previous night's events would affect the divorce proceedings. This is a gift, David said, reviewing the police report. Breaking and entering, violating a restraining order, conspiracy to commit theft. Rachel just handed us everything we need to ensure you get a very favorable settlement. What does that mean in practical terms? It means she gets nothing. No alimony, no claim to the house, minimal division of assets. The adultery was bad enough, but this criminal behavior seals the deal. And the criminal charges? She's looking at real jail time. Breaking and entering is a felony, especially when it's combined with conspiracy to commit theft. Her lawyer will probably try to plea bargain, but with her record of harassment and now this, she's going to do time. I felt a sense of satisfaction that I hadn't expected. For months, Rachel had been playing games, manipulating people, and trying to destroy my life for her own selfish purposes. Now, finally, she was going to face real consequences for her actions. There's one more thing, David said. The district attorney's office called this morning. They want you to testify at Rachel's sentencing hearing. About what? About the impact her actions have had on your life. It's called a victim impact statement, and it could influence the judge's decision about her sentence. I thought about it for a moment. The idea of standing up in court and telling the world exactly what Rachel had put me through was appealing, but I wasn't sure I wanted to give her that much more of my time and energy. Do I have to? No, it's completely voluntary, but it might help ensure that she gets the maximum sentence. Let me think about it. That evening, I sat in my kitchen, my peaceful, Rachel-free kitchen, and considered whether I wanted to testify at her sentencing hearing. Part of me wanted to stand up in court and tell everyone exactly what kind of person Rachel Mallory really was, but another part of me just wanted to be done with her forever. In the end, I decided to write the victim impact statement, but not deliver it personally. I wanted my words on the record, but I didn't want to give Rachel the satisfaction of seeing me in court one more time. The statement was 3 pages long and detailed everything Rachel had put me through. The lies, the manipulation, the financial theft, the emotional misuse, and finally, the criminal behavior that had landed her in jail. I ended it with a simple request, that the court impose the maximum sentence allowed by law, not just to punish Rachel, but to send a message that actions have consequences. 3 weeks later, David called to tell me the outcome. She got 2 years, he said. The judge threw the book at her. 2 years in prison? 2 years in state prison, followed by 3 years of probation. She'll have to serve at least 18 months before she's eligible for parole. I sat back in my chair, trying to process the information. 2 years. Rachel would be in prison for 2 years. How did she take it? Not well. She had a complete meltdown in the courtroom. Started screaming about how you'd ruined her life, how this was all your fault, how she was going to make you pay when she got out. Sounds about right. The judge wasn't impressed. He told her that she'd ruined her own life through her choices, and that blaming you just proved she hadn't learned anything from this experience. What about the divorce? Finalized yesterday. You got everything. The house, the business, the investment accounts, everything. She gets nothing. I hung up the phone and walked out to my backyard, looking at the garden Rachel had planted 3 years ago and then abandoned when she lost interest. The flowers were long dead, choked out by weeds and neglect. It was time to plant something new. That weekend, Simon came over to help me finish the basement workshop. We worked in comfortable silence for most of the day, installing the last of the workbenches and organizing my tools. "So what's next?" Simon asked as we shared a beer and admired our handiwork. I'm thinking about expanding the business, maybe hiring a couple of employees, taking on some bigger contracts. Sounds like a plan. You've got the time and energy for it now. Yeah, I do. Simon raised his beer bottle in a toast. To new beginnings. To new beginnings. As we clinked bottles, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. Rachel was in prison, the divorce was final, and my life was finally my own again. The basement workshop was finished, the garden was replanted, and the house felt like home for the first time in months. I'd learned some hard lessons about trust, about marriage, and about the kind of person I wanted to be. But I'd also learned that I was stronger than I'd thought, that I could fight back when necessary, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. Rachel had wanted to shake things up, to explore new possibilities, to break free from the boundaries of our marriage. She'd gotten exactly what she asked for. And now she had 2 years in a 6x8 cell to think about whether it had been worth it.